And I encourage you to that.
Has continued to support businesses by providing finances to keep them running. Last month, the Minister of Commerce, Industry and Trade launched the 45 million Emalangeni Micro, Small, Medium Enterprise Revolving Fund aimed at giving business people loans to support their businesses. Reporting for Eswatini TV News, I'm Nelson Langamandla with Musim Konda in Babane.
Sipho Shongwe has filed his heads of argument in a matter where he is appealing the judgment in his extradition case. One of his arguments is that there is no explanation why it took the Crown over 11 years to bring the extradition application.
Last year, Sipho Shongwe appeared before Manzini Principal Magistrate David Khumalo, who ruled that he had a case to answer in the Republic of South Africa and approved his extradition. Shongwe has now filed his heads of argument in his appeal to the Magistrates Court ruling. Shongwe argues that there is no explanation why it took the state over 11 years to bring the extradition application. He claims that the extradition application was insincere as it was brought after an unreasonable period of time. Shongwe argues that the Magistrates Court found that he acted in common purpose with unknown people to orchestrate his purported fraudulent release. He argues that how can a person be charged with common purpose with unknown people? He says it is hard to imagine an accused person sitting in the dock before a presiding officer being charged with common purpose without a co-accused sitting by his side. The appellant argues that the finding that he had no way of legitimately coming out of prison but quietly came out without inquiring about his release is neither here nor there. Shongwe argues that when one is incarcerated, he takes orders from the authorities and no person can be reasonably expected to refuse to be released from prison, even if an error had been made about his release. He also argues that the Magistrates Court did not take into account that he would visit Barberton prison and sponsor soccer games for inmates. It is his argument that this is not conduct consistent with someone who has escaped from that prison. Shongwe further argues that the Crown paraded one Eric Mokoena before the Magistrates Court, who testified that he was left with 12 years, 11 months and 3 days to serve in prison before his escape and had no proof of this. He added that the Crown also paraded one Seshasen Nkosi before the High Court when he applied for bail in a matter where he is suspected to have had a hand in the murder of Victor Kametse. Shongwe says Nkosi told the High Court that he was left with 2 years and 4 months to serve when released. For Eswatini TV News, Temgosi Mavimbela, High Court.
The World Health Organization says it does not recommend the use of 2 masks at the same time. This is despite other global health organizations promoting double masking. WHO's position on double masking has been made known by epidemiologist Dr. Kevin Makatsange.
Has reported that the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention conducted a study which revealed that wearing 2 masks is more effective in preventing the spread of COVID-19. Reports are that double masking can block 92.5% of potentially infectious particles from escaping an infected person. U.S. CDC describes double masking as placing a tight-fitting cloth mask over a thin surgical mask. Although this news may sound positive for those who have already started the double masking practice, World Health Organization says they should hold their horses a bit. World Health Organization epidemiologist Dr. Kevin Makatsange says they still recommend the use of a single mask.
Otherwise, the use of double mask, as from WHO, is not yet a recommendation because, you know, with COVID, there's a lot that is still being discovered. And when a study is being done, WHO collects that evidence. And then a team of experts, they look at the evidence and then come up with recommendations. So if there's evidence somewhere that double masking actually increases your chances of not getting the infection, Still, that evidence needs to be looked at by experts, look at the context in which that study was done, and then come up with recommendations.
WHO always emphasizes on that COVID-19 is new and lessons are learned with time. Dr. Makatsange says the organization will inform the world if there is any new information on the use of masks. For Eswatini TV News, Temgosi Mavimbela, Babane.
Eswatini Energy Regulatory Authority's Chief Executive Officer Vusumuzi Mkhumane says the lifeline tariff that the regulator is looking to launch will allow people who cannot afford a moving tariff to be able to buy electricity. Mkhumane says only 20,000 people will be allowed to apply this current year.
The Eswatini Energy Regulatory Authority's role is to create fairness on the energy sector in Eswatini. The authority is looking to launch the Lifeline tariff, which will allow people who live below the poverty line to be able to afford electricity. The authority's Chief Executive Officer, Vusumuzi Mkhumane, says this tariff will be for people who consume electricity for up to 75 units per month.
What we are going to do with the Lifeline tariff is we're going to define those people that cannot afford a tariff that is moving from where it is now towards a proper balanced tariff. Now, we will break those people into two: those that are indigent, below a certain income at family level, and those that can afford. So the Lifeline tariff will be a tariff that most likely is for people that can consume up to about 75 units a month. And that's basic. And what we found is that we have quite a large group of people in that category, in the region of close to 80,000. So in this current year, we're going to open it up for 20,000. The following year, 20,000. And then review the progress made and the issues that have come out from there. And once we have reviewed, it's either that we'll continue or we'll modify it slightly and then take another step forward. Basically, this is the first step towards ensuring that the tariff or the price of electricity is fair to both the consumer and fair to both the generator and all other people within the sector.
Eswatini Energy Regulatory Authority announced an increase of 3% for domestic consumption and 1.33% for business consumption in 2021-2022. For Eswatini TV News, Sondomlangeni in Babane.
The Hlatikulu Town Board has established a program that is aimed at developing the inner town roads as well as installing road signs. This was said by the Hlatikulu Town Board Clerk Bongani Dlamini in an interview with our reporters.
Hlatikulu has been for the longest time among the slowest developing towns in Eswatini, with a poor road infrastructure that is hurting labor mobility and delaying business development and overall urbanization of the town. The Hlatikulu Town Clerk Bongani Dlamini says the Eswatini government has injected 3 million emalangeni into the town's development plans for fixing the road infrastructure by rehabilitating potholes, installing road signs as well as lights. Dlamini says this should provide sustainable development for the town by the end of the year.
Imigwaqo yethu ayisiyo ekahle kakhulu kwasise ukuthi Hlatikulu idolobha elinemvula eningi manje imvula mayiningi ke ekubangela ukuthi bese sekuya kuyageduka endaweni eziningi nokuthi ke nale migwaqo yethu ebonakala ukuthi yona ayilona ubhuqu inesikontile.
Dlamini says the town board is encouraging business people to open businesses at Hlatikulu for the job creation and business development of the town. Reporting for Eswatini TV News, I am Sifiso Ngumalo. It's Muva Shongwe at Hlatikulu.
Archdeacon Begindlela Magongo of the Council of Churches has urged bus rank pastors to desist from preaching in public transport and at bus ranks. Makongo was speaking following pastors who still preach without their masks on at bus ranks, despite an order telling them to stop preaching for now.
Last week during a press conference, the three church bodies, which is the Conference of Churches, the League of Churches and the Council of Churches, came to a conclusion that pastors who preach at the bus rank and of course at public transport should stop for now and adhere to COVID-19 regulations. After that, the news crew took to Manzini bus rank, where marshals complained that these pastors do not properly wear their face mask while preaching. The pastors disputed that, arguing that they wear their mask properly and sanitize first.
Sikhanza mashela emene sanitize. Fike sivule tandla kaso. As sanitize. Singene with ema maskethi njengoba ungibona.
Yesterday, a pastor was caught on camera preaching in Manzini. In the process, his mask was not worn properly, putting the lives of others at risk. Archdeacon Pegindler Makongo urges them to desist from doing such and adhere to the COVID-19 regulations.
It is prohibited to be preaching on public transport, to be preaching where there is a lot of movement of people, to be preaching in the bus ranks. And therefore, we are calling upon those pastors to desist from doing such. You are endangering not only yourself, but the nation at large. You are endangering your own family. You are endangering the people of this country. We have seen some of these pastors not properly wearing masks, shouting on top of their voices, and not observing even social distancing. So that is a criminal offense in terms of the regulations of this country for COVID-19. So we are calling upon marshals and public transport operators, the city council, city councils, and also the police to act swiftly upon everyone who is breaking the regulations.
He says on Monday they will visit the bus rank and address this issue. For Eswatini TV News, I'm Kian MCB with Sontomlangeni, Eswatini.
The National Disaster Management Agency and the Royal Eswatini Police Service have warned members of the public to keep away from flooded rivers and dams as more rains are expected in the country during the weekend. The warning was issued during an interview with Eswatini TV.
Following predicted rains this coming weekend, the National Disaster Management Agency says they are ready to assist people who might be affected by the rains, even though they are still overwhelmed by the damages caused by Cyclone Eloise. This was said by the National Disaster Management Agency Communications Officer Wandile Mavuso.
I think that's we are prepared to send a response.
Assistant Chief Police Information and Communications Officer Nosipo Mnguni says people should not endanger themselves by getting into a river full of water, either by foot or vehicles.
We have seen in the past that these incidents have cost lives of innocent souls. So we request the public to refrain from trying to cross once they get to these rivers and they find water levels being above those that they normally have. We would like to have a drowning-free weekend. So as long as the public cooperates with us, we know that we can achieve this.
About 3 weeks ago, at least 12 people were reported to have lost their lives due to the effects of Cyclone Eloise. Reporting for Eswatini TV News is Tembeli Hlemakuchwa with Temba Shabangu, Lubombo.
The Deputy Police Communications Officer, Inspector Nosipo Mnguni, has warned members of the public against mob justice no matter what the cause may be. Inspector Mnguni was speaking following 2 men who were beaten by members of the community at Bulanzeni area in the Ho region on suspicions of stolen dagga.
There is a video currently trending on social media of two men being beaten by a mob in suspicions of stolen dagga at Bulanzane area in the Hoho region. Information gathered by the news crew is that there's been a trend of stolen dagga at dagga fields in Bulanzane area this week, where these men had disguised as police officers in the act. They were later caught that they were not officers of the law. That is when they were thoroughly beaten. It is said they were three, with a lady involved who ran for her life when they were caught and managed to escape. The two were whipped, and it is said one is from Zuluin and the other from Kwane Park. One later escaped and dived into the Nkomazi River, where he later escaped. The Deputy Chief Police Information and Communications Officer, Inspector Nosipho Mnguni, urges people to involve the police as opposed to mob justice and taking the law into their own hands, which is a criminal offense on itself, no matter the cause.
Singamaphoyisa ke siyasho sithi sicela abantu bayekele ukuthatha umthetho bawubeke etandleni. Noma nalokuthi yebo kona siyathi ukuthi laba lebe baganga ngako yinto lengekho emthethweni. Kodwa ke phela kube sesawuthatha loyo muntu locabanga ukuthi lothi wena ukugangele bese uyamshaya noma uyamlimata ngandlela thithi. Lokho kuphinze kwakhe licala kuwe wena lo sowushayile. Yebo kona ungakhala ukuthi webele info yakho, kodwa ke kuthinza umuntu vele akusiko emthethweni. Singamaphoyisa ke sisayisebenda lenzaba. Sisabafuna nje cishe bonke laba bathintekako kulesigameko sitho sitochubeka nemacala kumbe lesitawugcina sibabekile emveni kwekube sikhulumisane nabo ukuthi ngabe kwendeke endlele kahle kahle. Sisabafuna ngoba phela sikathile ukuthi kumbe kube khona lo topota kumbe lo limele noma kumbe lo topota ukuthi kumbe khona into letithethwe. Kwanyalo sinamunye nje lesisakhona lesisazama kumkhulumisa ukuthi asichazele ukuthi ngabe kahle kahle kwendekeni.
She says they are still looking for everyone involved in the matter, including those who were beaten. I am Gianni Msibi for Eswatini TV News, Manzini.
Good evening once again. You're still watching Eswatini TV. Now we'll have a look at our sports news. Tunisian side Etoile du Sahel has arrived in the kingdom to honor their CAF Confederations Cup assignment against Army side Young Buffaloes. Sahel brought a delegation of 41 people, comprising of 23 players and officials. The Tunisians arrived in the country through the King Mswati III International Airport at about 3 p.m. this afternoon. The match is scheduled for the Mavuso Sports Center on Sunday at 3. Moving on with our sports news, Young Buffaloes head coach Sabelo Mnisi says they will be going all out for a win in their first leg game of the CAF Confederations Cup against Tunisian giants Etoile du Sahel in a game that will be played on Sunday at the Mavuso Sports Center in Manzini.
Young Buffaloes will this weekend take on Tunisian giants Etoile du Sahel in the CAF Confederations Cup. The team is in a difficult situation considering that they started late preparing for the games, since sporting activities are still suspended in the country. Even with all those challenges, the head coach Sabelo Mnisi says they are going all out for a win in the first leg. Mnisi says they now know that in this tournament, when you are playing at home, you should take a lead to avoid problems in the second leg. So this time they will be going all out for a win here at home so that they make their job easier in the second leg. Team captain Nhlanhla Gwebo and Lido Mkhonda says they are all focused on the game and they think they have done all that is possible to win this game and promises to put in the work needed.
Full squad towards the game. Even the injuries, I was now about shy training maybe towards the end of this week. I was about right, and we are looking forward to the game. It's been a positive result. Spirit is still right, but they are motivated. First game, since siqale kunisibuya kunanjani kule COVID phinze, but ngicabanga is ready for the game weekend.
Ngicabanga ukuthi bonke amalungiselelo esikwendile konke lesicabanga ukuthi ungasitha kule game lesiyakiyo sekungaba kuthembisa ngizosebenzisa amaswadi kakhulu bona balandzele imathole isinyathelo ukuthi sitawamba sesebenzisa ngamaphamisela Mavuso.
The team is expected to do their COVID-19 test ahead of the game on Sunday that will be played at the Mavuso Sports Center at 3 p.m. Reporting for Eswatini TV Sports News, I am Patizwe Msibi, Babane.
That's all for now. Before we conclude, let's have a relook at tonight's headlines.
His Majesty King Mswati III has given the date for this year's official opening of Parliament. The Minister of Tourism and Environmental Affairs says indigenous plantations play a major role in protecting the ozone layer. And in our sports news, Tunisian side Etoile du Sahel has arrived in the kingdom for their CAF Confederations Cup match against Young Buffaloes.
And with that, we sum up our bulletin for the evening. Up next is the weather update. From myself and the crew here at Eswatini TV, thank you for watching. Good night.